Hello there. I want to talk to you a little bit about what sharp really means. And the reason that I want to talk to you about this is I was on a knife group recently, and I'm a member of like 4 of them. I don't post a whole lot unless I find someone that needs help and I think that they're not getting help that's addressing what their problem is, and then I might step in and say something. But for the most part, I just read rather, and listen, and you learn a lot about the community and stuff like that by just doing that. But there was recently a post with a new guy, and he posted he was new there, and he hi, I'm new, and he said I'm new to sharpening knives, and he was all excited about the fact that he got his knife to shave arm hair really well. And instead of someone saying, "Congratulations, good job, welcome to the group, you've laid a nice foundation for the edge," whatever, okay? What you got, the first response that you got was some jerk face that came on and said something like, "LOL, you can tell this guy's a newbie because he thinks just because it shaves his arm hair that his knife is sharp. Ha ha ha." Something like that. Most guys like that, they'll do that on the internet because they're too much of a wimp to say it to somebody's face. That's first. There's a lot of people like that, and people like that tick me clean off. I like to smack him. Okay? That's one. So, But number 2, the guy doesn't know what the heck he's talking about if he thinks that there's a particular level of sharp or refinement that you have to get at to call a knife sharp. If you can shave your arm hair on an edge all the way from the heel of that to the tip or the toe of the knife, then that's sharp. It's not super refined, might not be, okay? But that's the beginning of sharp, okay? The rest of it is refinement. After you reach a stage where you're cutting hair, okay, then you've got a good edge, and you can take that edge, that basic edge, and refine it. The thing of it is, it doesn't matter what someone thinks is sharp. If they think it's one particular level of refinement, they don't know what they're talking about. And as an example, I want to look at this knife. And the reason I want to look at it, this can apply to any knife, but it's because this has 2 particular types of blades. This knife, the first blade, is kind of a clip point blade. This is sort of a do everything kind of blade in reference to the type of knife that is, because you need to understand that the type of blade, the thickness of the blade, the grind of the blade, and all of that is specific to a certain task. Relative to the use this type of knife would be put to, this is kind of a general purpose kind of blade. So I might take this to, say, for instance, a 400 grit stone and hone it, or sharpen it rather, until it's shaving the arm hair off my arm, which this one will. And depending on what I do with this blade, or what I'm intending to do with this blade, I might even stop there. Or I might go more likely to a soft Arkansas and stop there. That would be the extent of the refinement of this edge, because I'm going to ask it to do a lot of different kinds of things very well. Okay? But now, this knife, this is a trapper pattern. The old traditional pocket knives, they have they're built on patterns, and this pattern happens to be a trapper. So it has two knives. It has that clip point, but it also has a blade known as a spade blade. Now this blade is a particular kind of blade. It's a specialist blade. Okay, this would be your primary blade that you would use most of the time, but this blade is called a spade blade. And it's called a spade blade because this blade is designed to castrate cattle or small animals, okay? Farm animals and stuff like that. It's also used to skin small game, stuff like that. So it has a very particular use or used to when this pattern first came out. So if I sharpen this blade and honed it to the level that I have for this blade would be good and sharp, but this blade would not be sharp enough, or I would consider it dull. I would want to take this blade to a really high level of refinement, as high as the steel would allow, okay? Because I would want it as surgically sharp as I could get it, because that's basically what I'm doing with it. All right? So when we look at sharp, the first thing and the last thing that you have to consider is, what am I going to do with the blade? Similarly, on something like this canoe, you have kind of a teardrop or spear point blade here, but this would be used for like a main blade. Traditionally, the people that I hung around with when I was a kid would put a really nice sharp edge on this, but this little blade over here, which some people would call a pin blade, it was traditional where I come from that this blade would be super flippin' refined, really highly sharp, just scary flippin' sharp. Because it wasn't used all the time, but when you wanted something super sharp, that's the way the old fellas I grew up around did it, okay? When you look at something like this knife, it's a hunting knife. It's a ruggedly built knife. It's got a fat saber grind to it. It's 1/4 inch thick steel. Alright? The bevel on this knife is going to be thicker. I'm going to put a thicker bevel on it, a bevel that's not as shallow but is fatter. Because this knife is going to do rugged things, and the more steel you've got behind that edge, the longer the blade's going to last, longer the edge is going to last. And the more rugged it's going to be, without chipping out and all kind of stuff. So this knife, because it's got that fatter bevel, might not be anywhere near as sharp as even this knife, although this knife will shave arm hair. I don't own a knife that I put an edge on that doesn't at least shave the hair off your arm. Okay? But I would not ask this blade to do the kind of work that this blade does, and I would not ask this blade to do the kind of work this blade or that blade would do. So when we talk about sharp and what sharp is, it's always going to be relative to what you're going to do with that edge. Period. And someone who thinks that every blade has to be at a certain type of refinement, and that if it's not sharp, if you really want to go down to it, the guy was talking about that, you could tell the OP was a newbie because he thought that shaving his arm hair meant that the blade was sharp. Well, you're showing how much of a newbie that you are. I don't care how long you've been sharpening. You haven't learned anything if you think that there's a level that every edge should go to of refinement before you call it sharp. Because there's not. It always depends on what you're doing with that blade. Now, as someone who enjoys sharpening, I might take something like this or something like that clip point all the way up to a Black Arkansas, okay? Just because I want to. But I'm going to consider what each blade that I'm sharpening is going to do, or what I expect it to do, when I bring it up to the refinement levels. And so, if I could tell you anything today about what sharp means, is look, first of all, you need a basic level of sharp, okay? And that is that the blade cuts arm hair from here all the way to here. That's sharp. And from that point on, you're bringing the edge of the knife up to a certain level of refinement and polish to the point that you want it to be. Okay? That there's a difference between sharpness and what I would call keenness. And keenness is determined by, sharpness is determined by, for me at least, it's whether it cuts arm hair. Keenness, because when it cuts arm hair, what's happened is that the bevel, both sides of the bevel have met in the center, and you have the finest starting point from which to begin to refine the blade. Keenness is how refined and polished that bevel is, and how smooth the cut is with a knife. And if I was taking this knife and doing some of the things that I might use one of these knives for, is to cut weed eater line when I'm doing yard work, or to cut small twine or rope, or to cut a package open, a blister pack, or something like that, okay? Or to cut tape. I don't want a super fine edge for that. I actually want an edge that's got some tooth to it. So I would take this up to like a soft arc, and that's where I would leave it. It's about what you're going to do with the blade. And sharpness and keenness are two different things. And you want the knife to be, the edge of that knife to be matched in refinement to the job you're going to ask it to do. That is sharp for that blade. And it's different with every blade and every task you're going to ask it to do. Thanks for watching. Later.